This is going to be, for me, one of the most ambitious trips I have ever undertaken. And here's why. Mainly because it's such a long one, and where I'm going to is so remote. Like some of the programs in the previous series, I am completely on my own. I have no camera crew with me. I am completely alone. Well, you see, completely on my own. No camera crew. Do I prefer it this way? Sometimes. Sometimes not. There's a lot of carrying to be done. I'm going to take a nostalgic trip back as to why I am so blessed, so lucky to be doing this job, and it's something that I am so passionate about. It all started here, actually, in England, when I was 14. My father bought a Range Rover. I've brought my family here on an uncharacteristically bright, warm and sunny day in England, to the place that the very first time I sat in a four-wheel drive vehicle and was taken off-road. It was my father's Range Rover. He drove it up onto the field, turned it around and drove it back off again. That simple act excited me so much. The very idea that a vehicle like this could give you so much freedom. I will never forget that moment. I was completely besotted with this vehicle. You should have seen my bedroom. I had posters with Range Rovers in all positions. And it was through this Ford that he drove it, with me in the passenger seat. It was a childish fantasy that one day I should do what that vehicle was capable of. I have, of course, migrated from the Range Rover, or more accurately, perhaps the Range Rover has migrated from me. My current mount is a 2005 Toyota Land Cruiser 105 series wagon, a relatively uncomplicated and reliable vehicle, which the current Range Rover no longer is. On this journey, it's got to take me about 25,000 kilometers. It already has 130,000 kilometers on the Odo. And because I am traveling mostly on my own, at times I will be relying on it for my life. One of the reasons why I was so obsessed with this Range Rover was that 2 years earlier my dad had taken me to the Okavango. It is a place of exquisite beauty in the Kalahari, where this river, the Okavango River, spills out like a bucket of water over a kitchen floor. It spills out over this vast area of desert. And it is a pristine wonderland even today. Taken there when I was 12, I was absolutely captivated. You see, even then, I was recording things on a tape recorder. My father had a Super 8 camera, and you can hear it in my voice.
Of the trees, and the outline of the grass, and shining waters.
So from that point on, we went back to England, mesmerized by this idea of going back to the Okavango in a four-wheel drive on our own, which is exactly what we did. We bundled our Range Rover onto a mail ship. We came to South Africa to stay. In fact, the very first time I ever sat behind the steering wheel of a vehicle was that Range Rover in the Moremi Wildlife Reserve, which is in the Okavango. The Okavango, which is I see as the source of all this for me personally, its origins are in the highlands of Angola, and that's where I'm going to go to find the source of the Okavango. Then I'm going to follow the river all the way down until it reaches the Panhandle, where it begins to slowly spread out into the Kalahari thirstland and vanishes into the desert, absorbed by the heat of the sun. I welcome you to the show. Namibia greets me on the first day of my expedition with a spectacular airborne display. The main purpose of this trip through Namibia is basically to take me from my hometown, which is Cape Town, north to Angola. It would be a complete waste of time to drive through this magnificent country and not actually spend some time on the way through. One of the things you have to put up with getting through Namibia are these interminable long stretches of hot, dry gravel where the scenery is really uninteresting, and if you suffer from agoraphobia you'd go absolutely mad. As for me, I absolutely love it. There are, on these desolate, barren plains, places like this. This is Solitaire. It can only be described as an oasis. This one with some rather eclectic garden furniture. You know, my trouble is, I just can't get enough of views like this. I just can't get enough of it. While I find myself on a lonely, windswept, grassy plain in the Namib. Tomorrow I'll hit the coast. But right now I'm going to get a jersey on. It's a bit windy and a little bit cold. You can see if you look very carefully, there's a line below the horizon. That line is a line of fog. The Namib is categorized by the fog that occurs every single morning along the coastline, sometimes drifting inland, sometimes not. And it's caused by the hot, dry desert meeting the frigid Atlantic. And I'm driving towards that line of fog now. Well, I've made it to the coastline. The frigid, angry Atlantic. But you know, I've been here before, and looking at it again, I actually think this part of the coastline is actually very boring. It's very dull. Because from here, about 500 kilometers north, nothing changes. Occasionally, you do get interesting places like the one directly behind the camera. This is Vlotskasbaken, built in the classical colonial style with large gardens and wide streets. Plenty of room for those. I don't get this place. These are obviously holiday homes, boarded up against the elements. But who would want to come here on holiday? Perhaps I have my answer. Some properties even have their own lighthouses, presumably to prevent them being hit by ships. And there are others wish that their house was built on another coastline altogether. So anyway, I'm not sure if I'm going to stick to the coast for very much longer. It's called the Skeleton Coast because of the skeletons of all the shipwrecks, except those that are not under the sand are under the water, and those that are protruding from the sand, because of the climate, they deteriorate and disintegrate so rapidly, there are very, very few wrecks left. Except for this one. It's the Zila, a trawler that went aground while being towed for scrapping, broke its line and drifted ashore. That was in August 2008. I'm surprised that during the 2 years it's been sitting here, it's still so intact. It is stupefyingly desolate, this road. They call it the Salt Road. I'm not sure if it's because it's made of salt, or whether there are people that transport salt on it, or whether vehicles rust so quickly in this area that it's as if the road was made of salt. I'm not sure. It travels all the way up on this road without break, all the way to the Konini River. I'm not allowed to travel. You need a special permit, special permission to travel on this road right up to the border at the north. But who would want to do it anyway, because it really is monotonous. It doesn't change very much at all. And what I thought I would do now is go to a place called Cape Cross Lodge. I don't know if they've got camping. Maybe I'll stay at the lodge. I don't know. And then go for a day visit into the Skeleton Coast Park itself, and then head inland. Cape Cross in the year 6685 after the creation of the world, and 1485 after the birth of Christ, the brilliant, foresighted King John II of Portugal ordered Diego Cao, knight of his court, to discover this land and to erect this Padrão here. This is Cape Cross Seal Colony, about little less than 100 kilometers north of Swakopmund. So I said earlier that this coastline is very, very boring. If you stay on the road, it is dead boring. You've got to know where to go. You've got to actually get off the road and go and, you know, if you see a signpost, and even if it looks uninteresting, take it. And then there are places of interest. It's quite smelly. The lovely noise of the chatter and the shouting and the bickering of all the seals. They're very, very content here, very, very happy here. There are not a lot of seals on this coast, but for isolated areas like this where they're protected. When they pitch up in other parts, the fishermen tend to not like it very much, and there have been lots of reports of seal shootings and clubbings and dreadful things like that. Here they are protected. This is actually a reserve, and they're all, well, most of them are having an afternoon sleep. Which is why tonight I'm going to seek some comfort. Cape Cross Lodge is the only vaguely comfortable lodge on this coast, apart from Terrace Bay, 200 kilometers north, which I understand is really only suited to fishermen. Cape Cross, I have found, has far more appeal. Now, the best single reason for not camping on this coast is this. The wind is freezing. This is how we do these apparent high-speed shots. Firstly, we photograph the surf as it is, normal speed, and then we photograph the sun, setting real quick, by shooting one frame every second. The camera does that for me. And then we put the two together and it looks like this. The trouble is, of course, when the sun disappears, we still have its reflection on the sea.